Picture this. It's 1478, inside the shattered ruins of a church in occupied Albania. The air is thick with dust, broken stone, and panic. A squad of Ottoman Janissaries, the most disciplined killers on earth, are behaving like deranged fanatics. They've smashed open a marble tomb with sledgehammers, not for treasure, but for bones. They aren't looting gold. They're clawing through decay. They're fighting each other like animals just to rip apart the skeleton inside. One soldier grabs a finger bone. Another jams a rib into his tunic. They believe these fragments are magic. They believe that wearing a piece of this corpse will make them invincible in battle. And this isn't the grave of a saint. It's the grave of Skanderbeg. 10 years after his death, the Ottoman Empire is still so terrified of him that they're tearing up his burial site like starving men, desperate to steal his power. So how does one man haunt a superpower like that? How does a kidnapped boy rise to become the empire's finest general, only to turn around and burn it all down from the inside? Before we dive into these forgotten stories of survival, betrayal, and war, if you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more long-form stories like this, and comment below where you're listening from. I genuinely love seeing how we're all connected across the world, exploring the past together. Now, to understand the Ottoman fury, you have to understand the Ottoman theft, because the empire didn't just conquer land, they harvested children. This was the Devshirme, the blood tax. Ottoman recruiters would storm Christian villages, examine boys like livestock, and drag the strongest ones away. They were taken to be broken, reshaped, converted, and transformed into the Sultan's elite Janissaries, the iron core of the empire. And in 1423, the tax collectors didn't come looking for just any boy. They came for royalty. They demanded the youngest son of John Castrioti, the defiant lord of Crusades, a man who'd been irritating the Sultan for decades. The boy's name was Guerrilla. He was only 18 years old, and the kidnapping was just the beginning of the tragedy. Guerrilla had 3 older brothers, Repash, Stanisha, and Kostandin. They were taken too. Hostages meant to keep their father obedient, but those brothers never came home. They died in Ottoman custody. Rumors swirled for years, whispers of poison, whispers of quiet executions. Either way, the message was clear. Guerrilla was now the last Castrioti son alive, trapped in the court of the men who had killed his brothers. Imagine the cold fury burning inside him, alone, surrounded by enemies, forced to smile, forced to survive. But he didn't break. He didn't rebel, not yet. He adapted. The Ottomans trained him in archery, swordsmanship, strategy. They taught him to think like them. They wanted to erase his past and replace it with loyalty. He converted to Islam. He took a new name, Iskender, Lord Alexander. For 20 years, he wore their uniform. He led their cavalry, governed their provinces, rose through the ranks until he became one of the Sultan's favorite commanders, the empire's obedient wolf. Except he wasn't obedient. He was waiting. And he played the part so perfectly that nobody saw the blade hidden behind his smile. Then the chaos he needed finally arrived. November 3rd, 1443, the Battle of Niš. The battlefield is smoke, screams, collapsing lines. The Hungarian crusader John Hunyadi is carving through Ottoman forces like a blade through cloth. And in the middle of that slaughterhouse, Skanderbeg makes his move. He doesn't charge the enemy, he signals his unit. 300 Albanian cavalrymen, men loyal to him, men who've been waiting for this moment. suddenly stop fighting. They turn their horses around, and they ride away. But Skanderbeg doesn't just desert. He commits the boldest act of deception in military history. Because he doesn't just need escape, he needs a key. So during the retreat, while the Ottoman army is collapsing, Skanderbeg hunts down the Sultan's Reis Effendi, the keeper of the imperial seal. He drags the terrified scribe into the shadows of a tent, puts a blade to his throat, and demands something priceless, a firman, an official order transferring ownership of the fortress of Crusades to Skanderbeg. The scribe writes the lie with trembling hands. Skanderbeg snatches the document and kills him instantly. No witnesses, no loose ends. Then he rides, not for hours, for 7 straight days. He crosses enemy lines, bluffs his way through checkpoints, flashes his uniform, flashes the forged document sealed with Ottoman authority, and no one dares question him. And when he finally reaches Crusades, the impregnable fortress guarding his homeland, he doesn't siege it. He simply walks to the gate, hands the letter to the governor. The seal is real. The order looks official. So the governor bows, packs his belongings, and hands Skanderbeg the keys to the most strategic castle in the Balkans. It's a masterpiece of betrayal. That night, Skanderbeg walks the ramparts. He tears down the Ottoman crescent and raises a red flag, marked with a black double-headed eagle, the crest of his father, the symbol of the brothers he couldn't save. Then the real rebellion begins. Because while that flag rises, Skanderbeg's men, aided by locals hiding in the shadows, move through the fortress like ghosts, and the Ottoman garrison is butchered in their sleep. By sunrise, the Sultan's loyal general is gone. The wolf has vanished, and in his place, the dragon of Albania has risen, standing on a pile of Ottoman corpses, daring the empire to come and take him. The morning after the slaughter at Crusades, the adrenaline burned off, and reality hit like ice water. Skanderbeg stood on the battlements and stared east toward the rising sun and toward the inevitable storm. He knew the Ottoman Empire better than any man alive. He knew that somewhere in Edirne, the Sultan wasn't just furious. He was calculating. The invasion plans were already being drawn. Grain was being packed. Cannons were being cast. Death warrants were being signed. Skanderbeg had the fortress. But he didn't have a country. Because in 1443, Albania wasn't a united nation. It was a broken puzzle, a patchwork of rival clans and feuding lords. You had the Dukagjini in the north, the Thopia family in the center, the Muzakas in the south. These nobles spent more time fighting each other over grazing land and river borders than thinking about the Turks. And to them, Skanderbeg was not a hero. He was suspicious. Yes, he had Castrioti blood, but he looked like the enemy. He dressed in Ottoman silks. He fought with a curved scimitar. He spoke like a man who'd spent 20 years dining with the devil. To these lords, he wasn't a savior. He was a dangerous variable. Skanderbeg understood something crucial. He couldn't command these men. He had to seduce them. So on March 3rd, 1444, he plays his second masterpiece. He invites every major Albanian prince to the city of Lecce, and he chooses the location carefully. Because Lecce is controlled by Venice, neutral territory. No single clan owns it. No warlord can intimidate the others. It's a safe zone for diplomacy, which is exactly what Skanderbeg needs. Imagine the Cathedral of St. Nicholas that day. The air is thick with tension and old hatred. The lords arrive with bodyguards, hands hovering near sword hilts, eyes scanning enemies they've been fighting for generations. They expect Skanderbeg to demand their submission. They expect him to crown himself king. But instead, he does the opposite. He doesn't ask for their land. He doesn't ask for their taxes. He stands before them, a man shaped by two worlds, and speaks not of ruling, but of survival. He paints a picture of what's coming. The Janissary Corps, the artillery trains, the endless ranks of disciplined killers marching into their valleys like a flood. He forces these proud noblemen to realize their petty feuds over sheep and villages are meaningless in the face of extinction. And then he delivers the psychological pivot. He declares, famously, "I have not brought you liberty. I found it here among you." Brilliant, because he reframes the rebellion. It's not Skanderbeg's war, it's Albania's war, and it works. The princes agree to form the League of Legion, a military alliance, the first time in Albanian history that the clans unite under a single banner. They elect Skanderbeg Captain General, Commander-in-Chief. They promise men and money, but they keep their autonomy. It's fragile, but it's alive. Now Skanderbeg has an army, but it's small. Even with the League, he can muster maybe 15,000 to 18,000 men. The Ottomans can field 100,000. In a conventional war on open ground, Albania would be erased in an hour. So Skanderbeg does what great commanders do. He rewrites the rules. He studies his homeland. Jagged limestone peaks, narrow mountain passes, dense forests, rushing rivers. And he realizes the land itself can fight for him. So he transforms his army into something the Ottoman machine isn't built to handle. A high-speed guerrilla force. He strips heavy armor. He trains men to strike fast and vanish. He uses the stratiots, light cavalry who ride like ghosts across goat paths that would snap the legs of Ottoman war horses. He builds signal fires across mountain peaks, a communication web faster than any rider. If an Ottoman column enters a valley, Skanderbeg knows before they even pitch their tents. He weaponizes geography. He plans to bleed the empire not with one great battle, but with 1,000 cuts. And the first test comes quickly. June 1444. Sultan Murad II sends Ali Pasha, one of his most experienced commanders, with 25,000 men. Their orders are simple: crush the rebellion in its cradle. Bring back the head of the traitor Skander. Ali Pasha marches into the Black Drin Valley full of confidence. In his mind, he's facing farmers and rebels. He expects them to hide behind castle walls. But Skanderbeg doesn't hide. He hunts. This becomes the Battle of Torville. Skanderbeg lures Ali Pasha into a narrow valley boxed in by steep wooded slopes. The Ottomans see a small Albanian force blocking the path and surge forward, smelling an easy kill. They don't see the thousands hidden in the forests. And when the Ottoman army is fully committed, packed into the killing zone, Skanderbeg gives the signal. The woods explode. Archers and infantry crash down the slopes like a landslide, slamming into Ottoman flanks. At the same moment, the Albanian blocking force turns and counterattacks head-on. It's a perfect double envelopment. Ottoman numbers mean nothing. They can't maneuver. Their artillery is useless in mud and chaos. Ali Pasha barely escapes alive. By sunset, the valley is carpeted with Ottoman dead, and the shockwave hits Europe like thunder. A small rebel force has not only survived, they've annihilated an imperial Ottoman army in the open field. In Rome, Venice, Naples, popes and kings sit up straight. The traitor general has drawn first blood. But Skanderbeg doesn't celebrate. As his men loot the camp, he stares at the bodies of Janissaries, men he may once have trained beside. He knows this was only a probe, a scouting party, and he knows he has just slapped a sleeping lion. Next time, the Sultan won't send a governor. He will come himself, and he will bring hell. The humiliation of Torviol didn't just irritate Sultan Murad II, it wounded him. Because the man who had destroyed his soldiers wasn't some foreign crusader. It was the boy Murad had raised. The commander Murad had trained. The weapon Murad had forged with his own hands, now turned back against him. And the Sultan understood something terrifying. Sending pashas wasn't enough. If you want to kill a dragon, you don't send servants. You go yourself. So in the spring of 1450, the ground in Albania begins to shake. Not from an earthquake, from footsteps, 100,000 of them. Sultan Murad II marches on Cruje with the largest army the Balkans had ever seen. He brings elite Janissaries, Sipahi cavalry, and a weapon that is changing warfare forever. Massive bronze cannons forged in Edirne, designed to smash medieval stone into dust. Skanderbeg watches that tide of steel from the peaks. He knows the math is impossible. He has fewer than 18,000 men total. If he meets Murad in open battle, they'll be crushed. If he locks everyone inside Cruje, the castle will be starved or buried. So he does something unthinkable. He splits his forces. He leaves only 1,500 men inside Cruje, under his most trusted lieutenant, Count Vrana. And he gives him a simple, chilling order. Hold the walls until you die. I will do the rest. Then Skanderbeg takes the rest of his army and vanishes into the forests. When Murad arrives, he sets up a city of tents around Cruje. The siege begins with thunder. Cannons pound the walls day after day, the roar constant, a kind of psychological torture. But Cruje holds. Its walls are built into living rock, stubborn, like the men defending them. Murad tries storming the fortress with waves of infantry, but the approach is narrow. His numbers become meaningless. His soldiers bottleneck and die beneath crossbow bolts and boiling oil. So Murad tries bribery. He sends Count Vrana an offer, 300,000 aspers, enough to buy a kingdom. Just open the gates. Vrana doesn't just refuse. He spits metaphorically in the Sultan's face and says he'd rather eat the stones of the castle than betray Skanderbeg. But the real nightmare for the Ottoman army isn't the fortress in front of them. It's the ghost behind them. Because Skanderbeg is in the woods, and he isn't fighting a battle. He's fighting a nightmare. Every night, just as the Ottoman soldiers drift towards sleep, the Albanians strike. Lightning raids, burning tents, slashed supply lines, cut throats in the dark. War cries echoing through trees before the attackers vanish again. The Ottomans can't sleep. They can't forage. Scouting parties disappear. The hunters become the hunted. The besiegers become the besieged. Murad is trapped in living hell, losing thousands to disease, starvation, and terror. By October 1450, winter approaches. Supply lines are shredded. The camp becomes a graveyard of dysentery and despair. And then, the unthinkable happens. Sultan Murad II admits defeat. He looks up at the double-headed eagle snapping over Cruje and orders the retreat. The empire marches back in shame, and Murad never recovers. The siege breaks him. Within months, he is dead. Europe erupts with celebration. A tiny rebellion has not only survived, it broke the will of the Sultan himself. Skanderbeg is hailed as champion of Christ. Courts toast his name, popes praise him, but Skanderbeg doesn't toast, because he knows what comes next. Murad's death means the rise of his son, Mehmed II. History will remember him as the conqueror, And Mehmed doesn't just want victory, he wants erasure. Because Mehmed and Skanderbeg share something dangerous. They knew each other. They grew up in the same world. And now this war becomes personal. And as the years grind on, the threat shifts from armies to betrayal. In 1455, Skanderbeg faces a danger that no armor can stop: rot from within. Enter Moisi Golemi. Moisi is not just a captain. He is Skanderbeg's right hand, the League's finest commander, the only man trusted to lead independent armies. If Skanderbeg is the god of war, Moisi is his high priest. But Mehmed is a student of human nature. He knows he can't beat Skanderbeg in the field, so he opens his treasury. He sends agents to Moisi with a poison-sweet offer. Why serve a rebel prince in a rocky wasteland, when you could rule kingdoms for the emperor of the world? We'll never know exactly what broke Moisi: jealousy, exhaustion, greed, fear. But Moisi defects. He rides to Istanbul, kisses Mehmed's hand, and returns to Albania at the head of an Ottoman army. The shockwave is enormous. Soldiers whisper, morale cracks. Because if Moisi doesn't believe in victory, who can? The armies meet at the Battle of Otuni. Moisi thinks he knows Skanderbeg's playbook, the terrain tricks, the timing, the rhythm. But he forgets one thing: Skanderbeg knows that he knows. So Skanderbeg changes the rhythm completely. He holds cavalry back, feigns weakness, lets Moisi believe he's winning. Then, when Moisi commits for the killing blow, Skanderbeg erupts, not with a clever maneuver, but with raw ferocity. He leads the charge himself, smashing through Ottoman lines with such violence that even hardened soldiers panic. Moisi is destroyed, humiliated. He flees to Mehmed's court, but in Istanbul, failure is fatal. Mehmed looks at the defeated traitor with disgust, and Moisi realizes he is already dead. So he does something more dangerous than war. He goes back. He rides into Skanderbeg's camp at night, unarmed, with a rope around his neck. He throws himself at Skanderbeg's feet before the entire army. The soldiers expect execution. Treason is unforgivable. But Skanderbeg looks down at Moisi, sees fear, regret, brokenness, and then he does something that stuns the Balkans more than any victory. He removes the rope, pulls Moisi to his feet, embraces him, kisses him, and restores him to rank. He is worth more to us alive and repentant than dead and forgotten, Skanderbeg reportedly tells his officers. It's an insane gamble, but it works. Moisi becomes fanatically loyal for life, and the message hits every soldier in Skanderbeg's army. They aren't fighting for a tyrant who rules by fear. They're fighting for something different, and they will need that loyalty. Because Mehmed is done with games. Because the conqueror is coming. And the final duel is approaching.